So, in the last episode, we have looked at elections, the phenomenon of democracy, the importance of elections in a democracy, the types of democracy, and a short overview of elections in India. In this episode, we will look at elections in India in greater detail. At what levels are elections held, and what are the stakes involved, who are involved. So, we will look at first the levels at which elections are held in India. As you know, and I believe you know, that elections are held in India at three levels. One, the central or the union level, the elections for the office of President, Vice President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. These four elections are at the union level. Then at the state level, we have the elections to the Vidhan Sabha and the Vidhan Parishad. Not many states have the Vidhan Parishad anymore, but whatever states, and we will look at those states later, have the Vidhan Parishad, those elections are also state level elections. The third level are the local level. In the urban areas, we have the corporations and the municipalities, corporations in the cities and the metros, and municipalities in the small towns, and in the rural areas, the elections for the panchayats. And in India, we do not use the term federal level, because the term federal is not mentioned in our constitution. So, the union level, the state level, and the local level are the three levels in which elections are held in India. Most elections are direct elections, whether it is the election to the Lok Sabha or election to the Vidhan Sabha or the corporations, the municipalities and the panchayats. All these elections are direct elections. What are direct elections? Where people directly vote. When people vote, we call them the electorate. Who is the electorate, or what is the electorate? Those who vote, those who have names in the voter list, and those who vote. So, they are known as, taken together, are known as the electorate. So, when people directly vote and certain representatives are elected, whether in the Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha, corporation, municipality or panchayat, those are direct elections. Certain elections are indirect elections, in which the electorate does not vote. In the place of electorate, who votes? A particular electoral college votes. So, what elections are, or which elections are indirect elections? The elections for the office of President, Vice President, the Rajya Sabha, meaning the Council of States, the upper house in the Union Parliament, and the Vidhan Parishad, the Legislative Council in the various states. These elections are indirect elections, where in place of the electorate, an electoral college votes in these elections, and it is already decided who will vote in what election. For example, in the election of the president, the MLAs and MPs vote. So, they constitute the electoral college. People have elected the MLAs and MPs, and the MLAs and MPs on their part elect the president. And since they do that, such an election is known as an indirect election, where direct participation of the people, direct participation by the electorate is absent. Such an election is known as an indirect election. So, in the presidential election, for example, the electoral college consists of the members of parliament and the elected members of parliament and the members of the legislative assemblies. The MPs and MLAs are elected by the people, and they on their part elect the president. So, whenever the participation by the electorate, the participation of the people is absent, we call it an indirect election. So, in India, the method used for electing our representatives, whether they are at the union level, the state level or the local level, the method used is known as first past the post method or first past the post system. What exactly is that system? It is also, before I proceed further, let me tell you, it is also known as the plurality system. As you know, that the Lok Sabha has 543 seats. In other words, our country is divided into 543 constituencies or electoral districts. Just as we have administrative districts, we have electoral districts also. These electoral districts in India are known as constituencies, and each constituency is represented by one person. In other words, one representative from each constituency. How is that person elected? How is that representative elected? The candidate securing the highest number of votes from a constituency, that person is declared elected from that constituency. The person who has got the highest number of votes. Now, one thing let me tell you is a party or a candidate can secure a majority of seats in the Lok Sabha, but they can win by polling a minority of votes. Let me explain you the first past the post system in greater detail. Suppose in a constituency, whether Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha, there are only 100 votes and there are 3 candidates, A, B and C. A gets 40 votes, B gets 35 and C gets 25. So, who is the winner? A is the winner, because he has individually got more than the other 2 candidates. But then if we look deeper, we will see that he has actually won with the help of minority votes. In other words, 60 people in the constituency did not vote for him. Only 40 people had voted for him. In other words, his or her victory is based on minority votes. So, a party can secure a majority of seats in the Lok Sabha by polling a minority of votes. It is not necessary that a party's number of seats will coincide with the vote share in terms of percentage of votes received in the entire country. In other words, a majority of seats does not mean a majority of votes. So, any ruling party may claim a majority, of course, and that majority is secured in number of seats, in terms of number of seats in the legislature, and thus it claims a mandate. What is a mandate? A mandate is support by a majority of the people in favor of a political party or positions that a political party has taken. In other words, approval by a majority of the people of a political party in an election. So, any victorious party does claim a mandate, whether it is in India, whether it is in the United States, whether it is in Britain. But then the claim of a mandate is generally fallacious, because a majority of seats, to remind you, does not mean a majority of votes. And these countries that I mentioned just now, all these countries have first past the post system. So, you can say that this is an anomaly, but then this is the simplest way to win or to declare a winner in an election. The person with the highest number of votes in a constituency, in an electoral district, is declared the winner. And similarly, a party with the highest number of seats in the legislature, whether union legislature or state legislature, is declared the winner. But that does not mean that the victorious party has got a majority of votes in terms of percentage. If we regard this as an anomaly, there was an attempt to remove that anomaly. Certain countries follow what is known as the proportional representation system. What exactly is this system? This system means that every party is allotted seats in parliament in proportion to its vote share. Vote share means the percentage of votes that it has got. For example, Israel, for example, Netherlands. Not only that, the constituencies are not single member constituencies, unlike in India. These constituencies are multi-member constituencies, and the candidates who are elected from those constituencies are elected according to their party's vote share from that constituency. So, voters are actually voting for parties. The parties do have lists of candidates, but the candidates do not matter. The parties choose the candidates who will ultimately represent them in the legislature, but voters ultimately vote for parties. So, because of the proportional representation system, the smaller parties also get an opportunity to get represented, to get their seats in the legislature, which they may not find an opportunity in countries with the first past the post system. India does use the proportional representation system, but in a very limited way in elections for the office of the president, the vice president, the Rajya Sabha, and the Vidhan Parishad. Proportional representation through single transferable vote. We will come to that later. Now, let us see how single transferable vote operates, single transferable vote or STV, that operates in the Rajya Sabha election. For example, in every state, when certain members are elected to the Rajya Sabha, you know that the name of the Rajya Sabha is Council of States. So, who elects the members of the Rajya Sabha? They are elected by the MLAs. Now, to win, a candidate needs a minimum number of votes, and that minimum number is determined by the formula that I have given in front of you. It is the total votes polled by the candidate divided by the total number of candidates plus 1 and hold plus 1, this entire thing plus 1. So, this, and very carefully note down this formula, do not make a mistake, because this is how you can make out how many minimum number of votes does a candidate need to win to get elected to the Rajya Sabha from a state. It may vary, the minimum number of votes of course will vary from state to state. Now, how is it all calculated? Now, in the Rajya Sabha election, it is not a method of stamping for a particular candidate. We generally, when we vote, we stamp for a particular candidate and leave the names of the others blank. But in a Rajya Sabha election, the voters who are MLAs from that state, they actually write their preferences like 1, 2, 3 against the name of the candidates. And initially, when the counting is done, only the first preference votes are counted. Whosoever have got first preference votes, their votes are counted. Now, if by counting the first preference votes, the minimum number of votes that is needed, the minimum number of votes that is needed to become a member of the Rajya Sabha from that state, if no candidate gets that minimum number, then something else is done. What is done? The candidates with the lowest number of votes on the basis of first preference votes, those candidates are eliminated. They are no more in the running, they are no more in the election. Now, in their ballots, whosoever has been mentioned as second preference, those votes are transferred to those candidates. So, whosoever has lost, they have lost on the basis of first preference. Now, in those ballots, second preference is also mentioned. So, whosoever have been mentioned as second preference, those votes are transferred to them, and this is done till the time clear winners emerge, that minimum number of votes is got. So, that is known as proportional representation system through single transferable vote. And as you see, this may be more representative. This may be more representative for the smaller parties, but then this is a more complex and I would say a more complicated system. So, the first past the post system was adopted in India and adopted after much deliberation, much thought given to it. Why was it adopted? It was adopted because firstly, it was very simple to understand, and of course, it is very simple to administer. You do not have to make those calculations again and again. Very simple. Whosoever has got the highest number of votes from a particular constituency, that particular person is the winner, that candidate is the winner. And it presents a clear choice to the voters. Most times voters look at parties. There are some who look at candidates. So, first past the post gives you the opportunity to look at both parties and candidates. Sometimes you may like the party, but not the candidate. Sometimes you may like the candidate, but not the party. But then for many people, for most people rather, it is the party that matters, the candidate does not. So, it gives the voters a very clear choice. Secondly, it produces a stable government and with a clear cut majority. Proportional representation may not lead to stability. Stability will be achieved in a first past the post system even with a coalition. Even if no party gets a majority, the coalition will have a clear cut majority. You cannot have a minority government in a first past the post system. If a party or a combination of parties is in a minority or are in a minority, then that combination or that party cannot be the government. So, this gives a stable government with a clear cut majority. And in the end, and that is not the least important, it elects a single candidate as a representative from every constituency. A single representative is responsible for his or her constituency. Voters know who is my MLA or who is my MP. So that is why first past the post was adopted. So in this episode we have seen in India at what levels elections are held, where direct elections are held, where indirect elections are held. We have seen what system the Indian Constitution has laid down, that is the first past the post system, and we have compared it with a rival system known as the proportional representation system, and to what extent that system is also followed, even though it is followed in a very limited way in India. In the next episode, we will look at reserved constituencies. What exactly are reserved constituencies? And we'll look at the phenomenon of free and fair elections. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. More than enjoying, you learned from this episode. Learning through enjoyment. Thank you so very much.